She built the floor they're standing on, but they sat her by the trash. On Thanksgiving Eve, Elise Graham walked into the restaurant she designed uninvited, erased from her own family legacy. But by dessert, the manager whispered, "Welcome back, owner. What would you do if your family betrayed you like this? Drop your thoughts in the comments. This story's not what you expect." I wasn't invited to the dinner, but I built the floor they're standing on. The taxi rolled to a stop in front of Graham and Coa's, its golden facade flickering under the November dusk. The air was dry and cold, tinged with snow that hadn't yet fallen. I stepped out in silence, wrapped in my tailored black coat. The restaurant shimmered behind the frosted windows, candles flickering against glass, laughter swelling and receding like ocean waves. No one waited for me at the door. Inside, the scent of rosemary butter and aged wine curled around my senses. I paused. My fingers brushed against the mahogany pillar near the entrance, Italian handpicked by me 5 years ago. I remembered the summer I fought for this wood in Milan, arguing with a supplier over finish and grain. The brass door handles gleamed beneath the chandelier's light. I designed those too. Every inch of this place bore my touch. Yet tonight, I was invisible. Fiona Alvarez stood behind the host, stand her spine straight but her eyes hesitant. We locked gazes. Her lips parted as if to speak, but she only gave a quick nod before glancing away. The seating chart on her iPad flickered once before she tapped the screen and murmured something to a junior server. A boy no older than 20 stepped forward with a tight smile and a red flush crawling up his neck. "Miss Graham." He stammered right this way. They still used my name, but only when necessary. We weaved through the dining room marble floors, gleaming under patent shoes and heels' gold accents catching the candlelight. Conversations lulled as I passed, then resumed in quieter tones. I saw Lucas, my younger brother, clinking glasses with a man in a navy 3-piece suit. His voice rose above the room like smoke. The server stopped beside a cramped two-top nestled next to a swinging door where a silver bin marked organic waste loomed just behind the potted bamboo. I stared at it. He gestured to the seat with trembling fingers. I was told this is your assigned table." Behind him, the service hallway buzzed with movement, bussing trays, clinks of glassware, a chef yelling, "Behind," as he brushed past. The cold air from the kitchen slipped under my coat like fingers. I sat. Slowly, deliberately. Across the room, Lucas raised a glass. "To family," he announced to Dad, "for keeping us strong, and to the future we're building together." He turned slightly, his eyes skating past me like I wasn't there. "To those who stayed the course." The guests laughed, murmured, drank. I didn't. Instead, I watched. I let my eyes roam across the walls where once a brushed metal plaque had read, "Founded by Gregory and Elise Graham." Now it simply read Graham & Co. Esther, 2018. My name wiped clean like dust on glass. I leaned back and folded my hands over my lap. The tablecloth was crooked. The candle flickered in its holder. The light made everyone's skin look golden except mine. I imagined how I must appear from across the room, solitary, dimly lit, seated beside a trash bin like misplaced luggage. Then came the shadow. My father, Gregory Graham, approached with a measured pace and a smile made of ash. He leaned in, voice low and smooth, just for me. "Not everyone belongs at the main table, Elise. Some people design it." His eyes flicked to the walnut centerpiece. "Others deserve to sit at it." My spine straightened. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. He walked away, the scent of his cologne trailing behind like stale victory. Laughter picked up again. A fork clinked against a champagne flute. A child shrieked with delight in the far corner. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out my phone. The screen lit up. One document recently finalized gleamed at me in the low light. Transfer of deed, 103 Newberry Street, new owner Elise Graham. They stole my seat, but they're still sitting on my blueprints. Above the mantel, the family crest loomed golden, intricate, proud. I remembered when it bore my initials, EG, engraved subtly into the bronze lower plate, a quiet acknowledgement of legacy. Now that plate had been swapped out, polished, over-sterilized. It was just another symbol of how thoroughly I'd been erased. The laughter from the long table rose and fell, a performance choreographed by wine and legacy. I watched from the periphery, just close enough to hear the cadence of their comfort. A hollow space opened behind my ribs. And then the memory came rushing in. August 2022. The boardroom was as cold as the proposal in front of me. Outside, the city melted under summer sun, but in here the blinds were drawn and the light was gray. Metal chairs, white walls, sharp suits, the scent of espresso and polished leather. Nina sat to my right, her legal pad mostly blank fingers nervously drumming. Across the table, Lucas reclined like he was auditioning for a stock photo shoot, Rolex just peeking under his cuff teeth, too white to be real. Gregory didn't sit. He stood arms crossed next to a wall-mounted screen showing a sleek deck Graham expansion fund, Q4 pitch strategy. I flipped the page in the binder they'd passed me. "You want a franchise," I said. "Turn Graham & Co. into a brand like a fast food chain." Lucas smiled, practiced and false. "Not fast food, Elise. Scalable luxury, boutique experiences, global dining rooted in our name and our values." My father's jaw twitched. Values don't show up on quarterly earnings. They show up in lawsuits. He smirked. "That's why we'll have lawyers." I looked to Nina, searching her face for the friend I once trusted. But her gaze dropped to her lap. Gregory continued. "This is bigger than you, Elise. Your obsession with control is holding us back. You're emotional. And emotion doesn't scale." Lucas reached into a leather folder and slid a set of documents across the table. "It's already done. We've restructured. You'll retain your equity stake, of course, but it's non-voting. This," he tapped the papers, "is your exit. Clean, generous." I stared at the buyout form, my own name typed neatly like I had already agreed. "You're kicking me out," I said the words barely above a whisper. "We're streamlining," Lucas said. Gregory added, "It's business. Don't take it personally." Back in the present, I blinked and the room came back into focus. The candlelight, the clinking forks, the echo of someone's forced laugh. My glass of untouched red wine caught the flame and looked like blood. I remembered the HR email that had reached my inbox by mistake a week later. "Ensure Elise's image is removed from investor decks by Friday." There was no signature, just compliance, just efficiency. The memory shifted again. The moment Nina had looked at me, just a flicker of guilt in her eyes, then slipped something under the table. A flash drive. I hadn't even noticed it at first, not until I'd felt the cold plastic against my fingers. Inside were invoices that didn't match services rendered, signatures that were scanned forged, internal approvals that had never happened. That was the night I stopped being shocked and started taking notes. Now across the dining hall, Fiona moved like a shadow. She approached slowly, gracefully, tray in one hand. No one watched her. That was her gift, being invisible when she needed to be. She passed by my table and placed a folded linen napkin beside my plate. Inside it, a handwritten card barely larger than a business note. "When you're ready, the basement server logs are untouched. F. They didn't know I owned the building. But I was about to remind them loud enough for the waitstaff to hear. The air inside Graham & Co.'s had thickened. Not from smoke or heat, but from expectation. I could feel it in the way conversations floated slower, heavier, forks lingered midair. The music, a string quartet rendition of Sinatra, was just a touch too loud, as if someone had turned it up to drown out what wasn't being said. At 8:45 p.m., sharp Fiona appeared near the DJ console, her shoulders squared, her eyes scanning for me. We shared the briefest of nods. Lucas, mid-joke with a hedge fund manager, lifted his flute to toast again, this time with a bottle of Bollinger delivered on a silver tray. "Only the best," he said, smug and gleaming. The server carrying it, a girl no older than 21, stopped by my table first. She leaned down, eyes wide, with something between nerves and awe. "Compliments of the house," she whispered. "The owner's tab." I tilted my head. "Am I allowed to thank myself?" She blushed and hurried off. The pop of the cork snapped through the room just as Fiona stepped forward. She cleared her throat, and the music cut mid-note. The lights dimmed to a golden hush, casting long shadows across silk ties and sequined dresses. Ladies and gentlemen, Fiona said, her voice calm, but carrying thank you for joining us on this special Thanksgiving Eve. Every head turned. Even Gregory's glass paused mid-sip. She continued, unfolding a card from her apron pocket. Before dessert is served, we'd like to take a moment to honor a new chapter in this restaurant's story. The silence stretched. Please welcome back the new majority property owner of 103 Newbury Street. Her voice sharpened, her eyes flicking to me across the floor. Ms. Elise Graham. Gasps scattered like falling glass. A woman near the center table dropped her spoon. Someone else murmured, "Wait, what?" Then the camera flashes began. Not many, but enough. Lucas went rigid. His mouth closed, then opened again. This is a joke," he hissed. Gregory turned to Fiona. "What the hell is this stunt?" She didn't answer. I stood slowly, heels clicking against the floor I once helped design. The floor they thought they'd claimed by rewriting history. Every step I took toward the center of the room felt like reclaiming air oxygen that had been stolen and stored away. I picked up my champagne glass and raised it. The bubbles shimmered beneath the lights. To those who thought I was gone, I said, my voice soft but carrying, "I've been here the whole time. I let the moment settle. You just didn't look down far enough to see whose name was on the deed." A hush settled like frost. Lucas shot to his feet. "You can't own this. This is our." He stopped, searching for the next word as if it had vanished from his vocabulary. Gregory said nothing. His jaw clenched and a vein near his temple twitched. I turned, slowly walked toward the main table, their table, and placed my clutch on the white linen. With care, I opened it, pulled out a single document folded in thirds, and laid it flat in front of my father's dessert fork. Transfer of deed, 103 Newbury Street. New owner, Elise Graham. He didn't touch it. No one did. They toasted with French wine while I reviewed the forged invoices beneath their plates. Upstairs, the private office hadn't changed much since I last stepped inside, except now it smelled less like ambition and more like antiseptic and old paper. The walls were still stark white. The glass desk was still too pristine to trust. The room hummed with cold fluorescence that clashed with the golden glow and laughter wafting up from the dining room below. Fiona stood near the printer, her phone flashlight pointed at a USB port blinking green. "It's all here," she whispered. "Every transfer, every forged memo." Nina wasn't kidding. I walked over, glancing at the monitor where line after line of ledger entries glowed under a spreadsheet's icy glare. Each one neatly labeled, signed by people who hadn't been present. The same 6 names. Some were board members. Some were entirely fabricated. All connected by a single hand. Lucas. A tab on the corner of the screen opened a recorded file. I clicked it. His voice came through smug and bored. "Sentimental liabilities don't scale. Elise was a branding tool. That's it. No one with a Pinterest board should have founder rights." I didn't flinch. He laughed off mic. Then another voice asked about our investor fallout. Lucas answered Ray Dalton. That man wouldn't recognize leverage if it sat on his chest. I buried him the same way I'll bury Elise. Contracts don't need ethics. They need loopholes. I closed the tab. Fiona handed me a manila folder. Inside were scans Nina had labeled with timestamps highlighting inconsistencies in board meeting notes, wire authorizations, and most damning, the co-founder registry amendment dated weeks after they supposedly voted me out. "He was sloppy," Fiona muttered. "No," I replied, flipping the page. "He was arrogant. Arrogance doesn't erase paper." At 9:47 p.m., I called Ray Dalton. His voice crackled through the encrypted line, low and even. "Everything on schedule?" he asked. "Yes. I've got the legal team upstairs." He exhaled slowly. "You sure you want to go public this fast?" "This isn't fast," I said. "This is overdue." By 10:03 p.m., 2 attorneys, one older, crisp and silent, the other typing constantly on a MacBook, sat across from me at the desk. Both were sent by Ray. Neither asked for my credentials. We reviewed the case outline: financial misconduct, investor fraud, forgery, Removal of a founding partner without due process. The evidence was damning and airtight. Midnight filing embargoed press release at 11:59, the younger lawyer confirmed. We've looped in the Boston Herald. They're sitting on the video file. I reached into my coat and pulled out a phone mounted with a lapel mic. I hit record. My name is Elise Graham, I said, eyes steady on the lens. I didn't return for revenge. I returned because silence is expensive and I'm no longer paying the price. I hit stop. Downstairs, laughter spiked again, the rhythm of oblivious joy. At 10:41 p.m., Fiona forwarded me one last image, the archived server log showing the timestamp when my name had been erased from the digital plaque, backdated illegally 3 weeks before the board vote. I sent the image to the lawyers. By 11:12 p.m., we had the court documents uploaded and pre-scheduled. The filing would hit the system at exactly midnight. Then just as I finished reviewing the embargo draft for the article, my phone buzzed. News editor, Boston Herald. Your story is going live at 11:59. We're verifying the signatures now. Brace for impact. The collapse didn't sound like an explosion. It sounded like forks clinking and phones buzzing. At first, it was just a vibration, the faint buzz of a notification rippling through the room like static electricity. Then came another, and another, like a quiet domino chain falling in digital silence. I remained at my table near the center of the dining room, eyes trained on the chandelier above the one I commissioned years ago, with hand-blown Czech crystal arranged in spirals that mimicked the Fibonacci sequence. It had always brought a sense of order. Tonight it felt like the last beautiful thing above a battlefield. Gregory lifted a glass, still trying to control the moment. To legacy, he began voice-polished, almost bored. But halfway through the toast, a man 3 tables away glanced at his phone and frowned. A woman followed suit. Then another. Murmurs flared like static. Lucas's hand froze over the dessert cart. What's going on? A chime rang out from the restaurant's AV system. The projector flickered. The birthday slideshow they'd queued for a guest faded, replaced by a blue CNN breaking news screen. Graham and Kira's faces, lawsuit over co-founder fraud. Developing story internal documents, forged signatures, and explosive video from original co-founder Elise Graham, full report airing now. For a second, silence took the room hostage. Then my face appeared on the screen. I didn't return for revenge. I returned because silence is expensive, and I'm no longer paying the price. Lucas knocked over a wine glass, lunging for the AV controls. Turn that off, are you all asleep? A waiter backed away, stunned. Someone near the bar began filming. Gregory stood but didn't speak. His mouth opened like a fish, gasping in shallow water, then closed without sound. Phones lit up like fireflies. The whispers grew teeth. She was the real founder. Wait, they erased her. I invested last quarter. Isn't that illegal? Gregory finally found words. This is misinformation. She's twisting facts. You all know how women get when Fiona stepped into the spotlight. Calm, poised, a small remote in her hand. She turned up the volume just as Lucas shouted at a sous chef. You little idiot, you let her in. You're done here. It was too late. Ray Dalton walked in, flanked by 2 quiet men in tailored coats. He didn't speak, just took a seat near the exit. His presence alone caused a ripple of recognition. Even those who didn't know his face knew the silhouette, the quiet power of a man who'd once bankrolled the future they now watched implode. Gregory moved to the center of the room. Ladies and gentlemen, if I may. You may not, I said, rising. My voice cut through the room like a scalpel. All eyes turned. Some of you believed in my silence, I said. But it was never agreement, just preparation. I walked toward the center table, their table where every Thanksgiving for the past 6 years, my name had been conspicuously missing from the seating chart. Well, I continued, consider this dinner adjourned. Fiona handed me a folder embossed in navy and silver. Effective immediately, I said, placing it on the table in front of Gregory. The Graham & Co. brand is dissolved. Assets are being absorbed under a new structure, one that doesn't require my father's blessing or my brother's signatures. The room fell deeper into stillness. Lucas opened his mouth, but a camera flash caught him mid-expression, mid-collapse. No one clapped. But no one interrupted. Ray walked up slowly. He extended his hand firm and steady. "We funded the wrong son," he said, voice low but clear. "Let's get it right this time. I didn't reclaim my seat. I built a new table. And I kept the guest list short. The winter air in Boston always felt sharper in December, like the city itself was exhaling steam from too many secrets. But inside 103 Newbury Street, the temperature was exactly right. Warm, calm, steady. Just like I'd planned. Gone were the monogram napkins, the oil portraits, the muted arrogance of legacy. The walls had been stripped back to their bones and repainted in soft, open tones. Light wood, matte brass, curved corners, ergonomic chairs. Even the chandelier had been replaced, now a web of recycled glass made by a women-run artisan collective in Vermont. No plaques, no family crest, no hint of Graham & Co. Just one framed note hung beside the main door, written in slanted cursive on aged paper. "You belong here." Even if they never said it. My mother's handwriting. I stood near the welcome desk as the first group of applicants filed in. Women in their 20s, some barely out of high school. One wore a thrifted blazer 2 sizes too big. Another held her resume like it might evaporate if she breathed wrong. They weren't legacy. They weren't polished. But they were sharp with questions about design philosophy, ethics, in management, emotional labor, and leadership. Questions I never would have been allowed to ask when I was their age. Fiona moved through the room like she'd always belonged in it, tablet in hand. Headset clipped, directing interns confirming lunch delivery. "We have press in the side gallery," she whispered to me. Local but real interest. "Want me to hold off?" I shook my head. Let them see it. Not the facade. The function. At 11:15 a.m., I walked into what used to be the main dining room, now a modular co-learning space with movable walls, projection ceilings, and round tables. There, I handed the first full scholarship envelope to a girl named Zariah, 17, black lipstick, lightning bolt earrings with a portfolio full of brutalist cake designs. She blinked in disbelief. But they said I didn't have the look. That's because I said, handing her the sealed folder, they never imagined a table like this. Outside, a light snow had begun to fall, soft, unthreatening, blanketing the chaos we left behind. At 3:00 p.m., I returned to the office upstairs. Clean lines, fresh air, no ghosts. The final set of documents waited on my desk. Legal closure of Graham & Co.'s tax transfers, brand dissolution deed finalization. The last pen stroke before their name was permanently written out of this address. I didn't hesitate. Black ink, blue folder. A quiet click as I sealed it shut. There were no fireworks, no applause. Just peace deep and earned. I looked out the window at the city below, breathing in the sound of my own space. Before I could turn off the desk light, my phone buzzed once. An email. No subject. No signature. I watched the video. I was wrong. Ma Margaret. The woman who had married into our mess and silently watched as I was erased. I stared at the message for a moment. Then I closed my phone, placed it in the drawer, and walked out into the hallway where laughter, real, fresh laughter, rose from the next cohort of designers learning to make their own blueprints. Not one of them asked for permission, and I wouldn't let anyone teach them they needed it. In the quiet aftermath of betrayal, justice didn't roar, it settled firm and undeniable, like the final puzzle piece clicking into place. The legacy built on silencing her name crumbled not with fury, but with fact. When injustice is met with unwavering resolve, even the most carefully crafted lies begin to leak. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't reclaiming your stolen seat, it's building a new table no one else can shake.